Have you ever found yourself just staring at a really complex data request, wondering how on earth you're going to write a query that anyone else, or let's be honest, even you 6 months from now can actually understand? Well, today we're going to dig into a super elegant SQL technique that turns all that complexity into pure clarity. I mean, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've all been there, tangled up in a crazy web of subqueries and confusing joins. But what if there was a way to build your query step by step, kind of like snapping together Lego blocks? So, here's our game plan. We'll start with a totally normal data request, introduce a much cleaner way to handle it, build the query piece by piece, and then talk about why this approach is such a game changer. All right, first things first. Let's ground all this in a situation that, well, if you work with data, you've definitely seen before. Okay, so here's the task straight from the source. A manager wants to see the total revenue broken down by year for every single customer. Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty simple. But as we all know, pulling that from a bunch of raw sales tables can get messy fast. So how do we solve this without creating some unreadable monster of a query? Well, this is where our hero of the day comes in, the common table expression, or as you'll hear it called, the CTE. Just think of a CTE as a temporary little virtual table that only exists while your query is running. You get to give it a name, you define exactly what goes inside it, and then, here's the cool part, you can use that named table in the next part of your query. Yeah, I love this recipe analogy. Instead of just throwing all your ingredients into a bowl at once and hoping for the best, you're creating these distinct, logical steps. It's like first you chop your vegetables. Then you prepare your protein, and only then do you combine them to make the final meal. It's all about breaking a big problem down into small, manageable pieces. Okay, let's get started and build our first ingredient. The most fundamental piece we need is the total value of every single individual order. So this first block of code, which we're giving the name order totals, has just one simple job. It's going to join the orders table with the order details table so we can multiply the quantity by the unit price. That's it. It gives us the total for every single order. So just to recap that first step, we define our temporary table, we join the data sources we need, and then we do the math and group the results. It's one self-contained, totally logical block of work. Nice and clean. All right, let's move on to the next logical step and see how we can build on what we just did. So we have the total for each order. Now we need to group those totals by customer and by year. Now this is where the real magic of CTEs kicks in. Our second CTE, this one called Customer Yearly Totals, doesn't go all the way back to the original tables. Nope. Instead, it uses the results from our first CTE, Order Totals, as its starting point. It's literally building directly on the work we just finished. You see the pattern here? It's just another simple, logical process. We defined our second little temp table, we select data from the Order Totals table we just created, and then we sum up those values, grouping them by customer and year. It's beautifully simple. So, we've prepped all our ingredients. We have our yearly totals for each customer all ready to go. Now, it's time to assemble the final dish and get that answer for our manager. And just look at how clean this is. The final part of the query is incredibly simple. All it does is take our fully prepared customer yearly totals table and join it with the customers table one last time. And why? Just to pull in the company name. That's it. All the hard work is already done. And this right here really shows the payoff. That step-by-step process produces this perfectly clean, organized table that gives the manager exactly what they asked for. No more, no less. Let's take a closer look at that final output. We've got the customer ID, we've got the actual company name, the order year, and the total revenue for that year all laid out perfectly. Crystal clear. So yeah, we got the right answer, which is great, but the real story here is how we got it. It's not just about getting the data, it's about writing code that is logical, readable, and frankly, easy for anyone to maintain. I mean, just think about the alternative for a second. Without CTEs, you'd probably have this messy nest of subqueries, one buried inside another. That kind of code is a total nightmare to read, a headache to debug, and almost impossible to modify later on. With CTEs, your code reads like a story, walking you through each logical step on the way to the final answer.
So let's just boil it down to these 4 massive advantages. First, readability. Your code literally tells a story. Second, maintainability. If business rules change, you only have to update one small logical block. Third, debugging. You can test each step on its own to find problems super fast. And finally, reusability. You can even reference a single CTE multiple times in your final query. It's a win-win-win.
Look, this technique doesn't just change your code. It changes how you think about and approach complex problems. It brings structure and clarity right where there used to be chaos. So I guess the only question left to ask is, what complex query are you going to simplify first?